Hey guys, hey, it's Dr. Jerry here. In this episode, we're going to talk a bit about stress. In our first kind of episode, if you will, we talked about inflammation, pro-inflammation, anti-inflammation. The second one, we talked a little bit about the resilience of the nervous system versus the tolerance and how important it is to get both of those high and elevated. In our third episode, we talked about autoimmunity specifically. I wanted to get that out there rather early. In this episode, we're actually going to talk a little bit about stress and kind of the effect that it has on the body, and just really kind of lay some foundational groundwork. We're going to certainly dive more in depth into each one of these kind of broad categories as we move through with these series. And so in this episode, like I said, I want to talk just a little bit about stress. And with stress, just like we talked about with pro-inflammation versus anti-inflammation, we want both of those to be in balance. We want both of those to be working well. And same thing with tolerance of the immune system. We want a high tolerance, we want a high resilience, but we need those two to be pretty well matched together. Well, the same thing in stress, okay? So there's two types of stress. There's eustress and distress. Eustress is a good form of stress, like going to the gym and exercise. That can be a very good eustress. It provides stress to the body, but with a positive physiological outcome. Now, if you go to the gym and you work out and you get injured, then you end up in distress. That's not very good for the body to get an injury, right? And so stress, no matter what it is, stress is one of those weird things that can really only be defined by your reaction to the event, right? So just like with the exercise, for one person to go exercise, it's very healthy and it's considered a eustress. Another person goes exercise and gets injured, that's distress. The exercise could have been the same, so it's not the event that's the determinant. It's your body's reaction to the event that determines whether it's a good stress or a bad stress. Now, within the nervous system, when we talk about stress, um, there's kind of two parts of the nervous system, right? And we need to define these two parts before we get into more depth as we go through this process. One part of the nervous system is what's called the sympathetic nervous system. This is what we think of as our fight or flight response. This is the one we think of when we're under stress, right? So when we're under stress, our body perceives that attack, whether it's a mental attack, a physical attack, a chemical attack, or an infection. The body perceives that, and it tends to kick us into a stressful state. And with stress, it's cumulative, right? And this is kind of the other factor that comes into it, is that if we're under chemical stress, if we're under physical stress, if we're under emotional stress, all those keep filling our bucket up and push us further down the road. And so within the sympathetic part, like I said, this is our fight or flight response. And there's a number of physiological things that happen when we're under uh, sympathetic stress. And one of them is that it gets us prepared to fight or fly, or in some cases freeze, under that stressor. And so what happens though is it increases our blood pressure. We need to get oxygen out to our tissues. It increases cortisol. In case we are attacked, cortisol is um, a way of clotting arteries. It's also somewhat a benefit to preventing infection and things like that. So if we do have to fight and we get injured, we want that higher cholesterol. It pushes glucose out into the body. We need energy. We need to be able to, again, fight or flight. One of the big things that I want to talk about as it relates to the immune system, though, is that it actually suppresses our immune system. And you may say, well, why is that? Why would we want to suppress our immune system under stress? Well, the thing is we're supposed to be under acute stress, right? So, the old analogy is you're walking through the forest and a tiger jumps out. And in that moment, you have to decide, are you going to fight that tiger? Are you going to run from the tiger? Or are you going to freeze? And so in that moment, you don't really care about a cold that you may catch a week from now, right? Um, and so you're in that moment to win it. The body has to defend itself against the tiger. And so you'll kick into that acute stress response. It shuts down the immune system for a while because, again, who cares if you get a cold a week from now? You need to be able to fight that tiger now. And so, what it also does in the body is like I said, we kind of have two parts of the nervous system. We have the sympathetic part, but the side that balances it is our parasympathetic. And the parasympathetic is what we think of for relaxation and digestion and reproduction, right? And so it's what helps us absorb nutrients from our foods. It's what helps us rest and to be able to sleep at night. It's the reproduction side. Nobody is thinking about reproducing when they're running away from a tiger, right? And so, but at that side of the system, the parasympathetic is very powerful for the immune system as far as being able to stimulate immune response and to help balance some of these anti-inflammation, pro-inflammation, immune tolerance, immune resilience. And that's that parasympathetic side. That's what comes in and kind of re-regulates that side. And so unfortunately, in our society, we spend so much time under stress, whether it's work stress, financial stress. Um, we don't really have moments of stress. We have time periods of stress. And so we tend to really shift ourselves. Just like I said, we shifted ourselves more towards a pro inflammatory um, pathway. We tend to push ourselves towards a sympathetic dominance pathway when we're under this chronic stress that we're under. And over time, that really makes an impact on the parasympathetic side and really down regulates our immune system in the process, right? And so, one of the things in this pandemic, that everybody's under stress, am I going to catch the virus? Is a loved one going to catch the virus? Am I going to be able to pay the bills? What's going to happen next in this time of uncertainty? And it really pushes everybody towards the sympathetic side, which is really counter to what we really need to be in right now. We need to be in this parasympathetic side of the equation. And so we've really elevated sympathetic while suppressing our parasympathetic. Now, the body is really designed to keep these two in check and in balance. But when we put ourselves in a constant stress environment, whether it's stress of entrapment, stress of trying to control things we can't control, and we're going to dive into some more depth into these real practical steps. But I just want to lay a little bit of quick groundwork on um, sympathetic stress versus parasympathetic stress. Kind of one more piece of the puzzle that we need to think about as we're trying to build this robust immune system. So I hope you got something from this lecture, some piece of information that you can implement. Thanks for your time.